29-year-old Bostonian Steve Callahan is halfway through the sailing trip of a lifetime.
I remember the first time I went out sailing. I loved the immediacy of it. You can go off and have an adventure.
He's already sailed from the USA to the Canary Islands and is now heading off on the 3,500-mile return leg, back across the Atlantic to the Caribbean.
Testing.
I figured on the very outside it would be a month to get to the Caribbean, but I'd probably make it in a few weeks.
For Steve, the trip is an adventure and also a means of escape.
My life was in a bit of a shambles. My marriage had gone south and we had split up. There I was, ready for a new stage of my life. The weather just started turning dirty. It was probably blowing 35 or so knots. And the waves started growing.
For an experienced sailor like Steve, it's nothing out of the ordinary.
I'd seen a lot worse weather before. And so I figured, well, it'll probably be a day or two and this will scoot by. I wasn't worried. Everything was fine.
As night falls and the rough weather continues, Steve switches on the autopilot and beds down for the night.
People think that sailing is a very quiet undertaking. It's not. Big waves are slamming against the side of the boat. You get this quite jerky motion, but I was still able to kind of lie down, and I was kind of half asleep. All of a sudden, there was this big bang on the side of the boat. There was just this huge flood of water immediately.
Steve has no idea what he's hit, but the boat's hull has been torn apart.
The water was rising very, very quickly.
Within seconds, the water is above his head.
I just thought, this boat is going to be underwater. I'm going right to the bottom.
Steve's boat is sinking. He knows he has seconds to get to the life raft up on deck.
So I yank on the line, and if the line keeps coming out, no, nothing. This didn't work at all. Finally, boom, it pops open.
Steve makes it to safety. But just as he's about to cut himself loose, a terrifying thought hits him.
With the equipment that's in the raft, I will not last very long at all.
Everything he needs to have any chance of survival is stowed deep inside the flooded boat.
It was essential that I go back on the boat and dive down and get equipment. Even though I realized that the boat could slip under the waves at any moment.
Against every instinct, he knows he has no option but to dive back down into the sinking boat.
It was all dark in there, so I couldn't really see anything. I could feel the ditch kit. It was tied down. And I started cutting away.
Steve frees his emergency supply kit. But just as he makes it to the exit hatch,
The hatch slammed closed. The boat's covered with water. I'm going down. I thought that was it. If I don't get out of here right now, I am going to die. There's 100% certainty of that.
but just as Steve's lungs are about to burst, a huge wave breaks across the boat.
All of a sudden, there's air. It was a huge, huge relief.
With only seconds to spare, Steve escapes, clutching his vital emergency supplies.
I jumped into the raft and I saw that I was drifting away from the boat.
Steve can only watch as he drifts away from not just his boat, but also his dream.
I went drifting off into the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It just was kind of devastating. That first night, it blew hard. Really cold and really wet and really scary. I was shivering a lot and I was worried about dying of hypothermia. I might not make it till the morning.
The currents are pushing Steve westwards, towards the shipping lanes, his only chance of rescue. But he's over 2 weeks away, with only enough water to last him a few days.
It wasn't going to keep me alive very long. You know, I'm taking a little sip every now and then, hardly even swallowing it, really. It's just being more absorbed. I'm getting really thirsty.
Steve ekes out his supplies for a whole week, but knows his only hope are the solar stills. But first he must understand what he's doing wrong.
It was critical to figure out how to use these things. Just like go back just from square one and try to figure out how does this thing actually work.
It's a drastic step, but he decides to rip one of his 3 precious stills apart, in the hope that he can work out how to make them produce fresh water.
Right.
And then it finally dawned on me, it had to be inflated just the right amount. the solar still to produce, I'm talking a spoonful of fresh water, was like the hugest high I could possibly have.
Steve now has a tiny supply of water. But after 7 days at sea, he faces yet another problem. He's run out of food.
I was really hungry, just like really struck me how desperate I had become. There's no way I'm gonna live out here.
For days, Steve continues to try and catch fish, but to no avail.
In the physical sense, it was incredibly depressing. In terms of what I'd felt like I had done with my life, it was depressing. It was the most hellish time in my life.
All Steve's attempts to catch fish have failed. But if he gives up, he'll die of starvation.
I knew that this was not going to be easy. The fish has got to be right under the spear tip.
Yes!
By day 14, I've caught my first fish and I've produced water. So now, as long as the raft stays in one piece and I keep my act together, I might be able to live out here indefinitely.
For the first time in 14 days, Steve has a sense of hope. But the vast and deadly ocean is not about to let him rest. After a month at sea, Steve has drifted right through the shipping lanes, unnoticed. And back home, nobody even knows he's missing.
So pulled with emotions. That was the first time I cried. And it was like, this is the state of my life. What are you doing out here? My life just seemed completely and utterly as open and empty as the ocean.
Steve has drifted an epic 700 miles, but now faces a devastating new reality.
It was really very depressing because I just didn't think that I could fix it.
Steve knows the punctured raft is a disaster. He's going slower, wasting precious calories pumping it up, and now faces an even bigger problem.
I started consuming both water and the fish that was hanging to dry. I was unable to renew that stock while the bottom was deflated. I imagine it wouldn't have been a whole lot longer before I would have died. And then I got scared. This is very real, and you're going to be dead in a matter of hours if you don't snap out of it and get yourself together.
In a final act of desperation, Steve searches for anything that might save his life.
And it just, something happened, and it just clicked, and I go, oh yeah, the fork.
Steve hopes that a fork might just be strong enough to secure a patch to the raft.
I couldn't jump around and jump for joy or anything, but that was just like the hugest victory of my life.
Steve now only has 3 cans of emergency water left, and his body's toxic salt levels are pushing his sanity to the limits.
The physical part of me is going, hey, there's water over there, let's go snag that. But there was that overbearing rational part of me that was going, no, 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 I don't care. Unless, you know, you are dying, you're not getting into that right yet. This is a view of heaven from a seat in hell.
Alone on the ocean for over 70 days, Steve's body and mind are now shutting down. His only hope is to reach land.
I expected to see the islands like days and days before now. I should be reaching the islands. I should be seeing some sign of reaching the islands.
But then Steve has a shocking realization. If he's miscalculated his position, currents will sweep him back into mid-ocean and certain doom.
Maybe I'm way north of the islands, next stop England, you know, 8 months from now. So that was tough. I was very worried that I had screwed up and I wasn't going to make it. I just don't know anymore. Maybe I'm dead. I've never been dead before. Maybe this is what it's like, and this is what I deserve for my shabby life, and maybe I'm just gonna be floating around out here forever. I felt all the hopelessness of people who'd been adrift at sea before and never came back, and nobody ever knew what happened to them. And here I was amongst them, and I could kind of feel them all around me. It just was a horribly desperate feeling. It was over. I was just done. I had no more to give. all of a sudden, it was like all kinds of crates and bottles and plastic. To me, that was the first definitive sign that I was coming into changes. I'm gonna see something. The sun rose. It was like, pff, there's an island in front of me. I couldn't have been more than 10 miles out. To see the green of the island was like, it was it was intense.
But to his horror, Steve realizes that the island is an impregnable fortress of vertical cliffs and razor-sharp coral reefs.
Oh my God, I've come all this way, and there's no way I can make a landing.
After enduring so much for so long, Steve can't let salvation slip away from him at the final hurdle.
This voyage is ending today. No question about it. One way or the other, this is going to come to an end. That's great. Somebody's actually, I couldn't believe somebody was actually out there.
On the morning of his 76th day adrift, Steve is spotted by some local fishermen.
He said something to the effect of like, "What you doing out here, man?" You know, it's like, well, I'm not out here, you know, improving my suntan. My senses were like plugged into an electric circuit somehow. They were all amplified so that every color was like really, really vibrant and every smell was really, really intense. It just was like heart-wrenching. It was so beautiful to me.
22-year-old Benedict Allen has always been a dreamer, and he's living his biggest dream yet. He's following in his father's footsteps and becoming an adventurer.
My dad was a test pilot, and it was very exciting having this glamorous father who used to fly these planes over the house. And I just assumed that one day I'd be an adventurer of some sort, just like my dad. I just wanted to be like one of those great explorers like Cook or H.M. Stanley or Livingstone.
And for his first expedition, Benedict has come to the greatest wilderness on Earth, the mighty Amazon rainforest.
As a child, I read in my books about El Dorado, which was this mythical land of gold. But no one found El Dorado, and I thought one day that would be my destiny.
His companion for this epic journey is a stray dog he's befriended along the way.
I was lonely, and that dog reminded me of my dogs at home. And I called him Cashew, which was Indian for dog. So he was simply dog to me. But he began to be more than a dog, he began to be my friend.
Despite his youthful enthusiasm, This is Benedict's first major adventure. He's attempting to traverse over 1,000 miles of dense, uncharted rainforest. So he's relying heavily on 2 local guides to help him survive.
They taught me how to feel comfortable in the forest, which to me was a confusing place. They began to show me what I could eat and what I had to avoid, how to hunt. I was utterly dependent on these 2 men and their extraordinary library of knowledge, because I knew nothing, absolutely nothing.
For 3 months, they head deeper into the vast rainforest and are nearing the supposed location of El Dorado, the city of gold. But Benedict has been warned of the dangerous illegal miners that have been drawn here. And there are troubling indications that they are not alone.
Signs were ominous from the beginning. The water, just empty cachaça bottles. Cachaça is a sort of cheap rum. There was a sense that there were outsiders in the forest. I'd been warned that these were bank robbers, thieves, people accused of murder. They'd all headed off into the forest because here was a chance of making a quick buck.
Despite Benedict's trepidation, they must find a place to camp as night is falling.
We went off through the trees, and suddenly we stumbled across this small settlement. But whereas I was worried, my 2 Indian guides were absolutely entranced. I remember one of the Indian guides picking up a can opener and wondering what that was. Suddenly, this character, Mendez, arrived. He was the classic gold miner. And I just felt I've got to get out of here.
¿Qué estás haciendo aquí, entonces?
Estamos buscando El Dorado.
¿El Dorado?
Estamos viajando al sur por la boca del Amazon.
No, mi amigo. Si viajas para allá, muy peligroso. Los rápidos están bloqueados, pero puede ayudarte.
Mendez said to me, look, I'll be your guide. I'll take you down the river towards El Dorado. Furthermore, I know a track. You'll be able to walk from the river to the outside world.
¿Está bien? Divertimos.
And I thought, well, maybe I've misjudged this gold miner. Maybe he isn't that bad. But I thought I should go along with this plan. I'll be heading in the right direction at least.
Bien.
Benedict reluctantly agrees to the offer and settles down for the night. But as the night wears on, he has a growing sense that all is not what it seems.
That night, I woke up in my hammock feeling that something was wrong. Just an uneasy feeling, and I remember thinking, I've got to check on things. So I put on my boots, potted down to the river to see if my canoe was still there, see if my supplies were there. I think effectively I was making sure that my exit was okay. And I heard this conversation going on between Eduardo and Mendez, and they were discussing me. They were saying, why don't we go and slit his throat right now.
Porque no rajamas la garganta ahora.
Los indios que tendrán problemas si lo matamos.
No. A ellos le dan igual.
I had a rising sense of fear and adrenaline began thumping in my ears.
Venga. Lo haceros ahora.
¿Quién va a ser?
No lo haría cuando está durmiendo.
And I realized I'm just going to be killed. These are my last moments alive. I just thought, go, I have to run, get out of here. Gathered my hammer together, my mosquito net, ran to the canoe. And suddenly, I was in the darkness in my canoe with my dog.
And with his loyal friend Cashew, Benedict makes it away from danger.
My first thought was relief. Then I had this terrible, dawning realization that I wasn't safe at all. I was surrounded by forest. It was the middle of the night, and I was very, very alone.
Without his guides, Benedict is now stranded in over 2 million square miles of rainforest, with no one to show him the route out.
I really was not at the end of a nightmare, but at the beginning of one.
Cashew. Let's get out of here, boy.
I paddled upriver for maybe an hour, and I thought, I'll just calm down, I'll just pull into the side. Made a little camp and thought, I've got to come to terms with this new situation. And the situation was, my childhood dreams were over. And I felt, I've got to get out of here, got to get out of here. And there was blood pounding through my head. I did not know what was out there in the forest. And I didn't know myself, really. I didn't know whether I had it in me to survive. The big question mark was how long I could keep on going. And it wasn't that I was running out of food, I was just running out of belief in myself.
By mid-afternoon, it seems Benedict and Cashew have cleared the worst of the rapids. They can now continue to search for a way out of the forest.
I remember starting to paddle my way into the clear water, but I hadn't quite got far enough. Suddenly I found the situation out of control. I started going backwards. It became absolutely terrifying. I realized that I was fighting for my survival. I had to keep this canoe upright. But then, wham! The canoe shattered with the impact. Everything now ended up in the water. The dog, the supplies, and me. It was a moment of absolute terror as I realized not only was I losing my possessions, but actually I was having to fight for my life. I was gagging on the water, trying to get my breath. Finally got some purchase and waded my way towards the riverbank. I remember just trying to take in the situation, and the situation was that I'd lost virtually everything I needed in order to survive, and lost my companionship, Cashew, the dog.
For hours, Benedict fights his way through the jungle. But as night falls, he can go no further. And when the sun goes down, the searing temperatures plummet. So he makes a shelter, using a technique he learned from his guides.
I thought, oh, it doesn't look too bad, really. I felt a little bit of pride. And then lay down and realised that I was wet. There's more dampness coming up from the ground. I lay there, sweating away, and then felt incredibly cold.
The brutal reality is that Benedict isn't prepared for this at all. In the 100% humidity, he has no way of keeping dry or warm. And with his mosquito net gone, no way to protect himself against the deadly disease he fears the most, malaria.
Then the insects started moving in, and a long night began. I was feeling absolutely terrible, wrung out, because I'd been awake all night with the insects. And I had to light a fire and dry out my clothes just to fend off this clawing wetness which wore you down. I felt very burdened by the forest. I just thought, I've got to get out. I've got to get out of this place.
Benedict resumes his hike towards the outside world, but so far has only managed 4 of the 100 miles he has to traverse. It's been 4 days since he last ate, and he's beginning to weaken.
I was starting to feel hunger pains. And I knew that unless I sorted out some sort of way of getting food, I was just going to die of starvation. I started to think how I could get nourishment from this place that seemed intent on killing me. So I thought, okay, I've got to settle myself down and build a few traps.
And Benedict knows that if you want to trap an animal, you have to find its trail.
You make 2 parallel lines of sticks that you jab into the forest floor, and you funnel the mouse along. And there's a little bit of bait that you put at the end, and it triggers a mechanism, and boom, a log comes down and flattens the mouse, and you get this flat rodent for your supper. It's so time-consuming to even fashion these things, but waiting for an animal to come along, I found absolutely exasperating. I thought, I'm totally incompetent here. I don't belong in the forest, and furthermore, the forest seems to know it. It's almost like I'd been found out. Every species here has learned to survive, and those that aren't good enough die. And I'm going to be next, because I don't know how to cope here. I can't even make a simple trap.
Benedict has managed to fight his way through 25 miles of jungle, a mere quarter of the distance he believes he needs to travel to reach the outside world. The only food he's eaten are the tips of ferns, but it's not enough. and he's beginning to experience the first effects of starvation.
My hunger was really bad. I felt weak. I was doing less and less miles every day and feeling more and more confused.
And weakened by hunger, his body is becoming too frail to withstand the jungle's constant onslaught.
Insects were more of a problem, and so were the bites. Some of them were starting to fester and weep. All of this was sort of visible evidence that I was being attacked. And suddenly, there was a palm tree. It was a Malaria palm. And I remembered how my guides had taken the berries and they'd made a wonderful purple mush. Suddenly I had all the energy in the world because I saw hope now. I drank down this wonderful, nutritious liquid. God, it felt so good to have my stomach full.
Benedict is so weak that his stomach is unable to digest this rich berry pulp. And as starvation takes a stranglehold, his body is beginning to break down.
It was a terrible situation because on the one hand, I could eat, but if I did eat, I'd feel more sick. It didn't seem to be solving any problem, and it was a sort of hellish situation. When I thought it couldn't get any worse, it did get worse. I lay on the forest floor, racked by pain. My liver, my kidneys were being attacked. I was fighting just to keep myself sane.
Benedict's malaria has now reached the final and fatal stage. The parasites are aggressively multiplying and destroying his vital organs, causing his body to collapse. Within 24 hours, he will experience first coma, then death.
This was the moment when it could all end very, very quickly. I had this rising sense of panic that I had to get out of the forest. I had to do whatever it took. Whatever happened, I had to keep moving. Keep on putting one foot in front of the other. I kept on going, making pitiful progress and sometimes no progress at all. Couldn't even think straight. I couldn't even see my compass. At that moment, I suddenly thought, well, I'm just never going to get out of here. It was just too big to fight. And I was losing that fight.
Benedict simply cannot go on. He's just too weak, too ravaged by disease.
It was a terribly lonely moment, thinking, this is the end. And suddenly, amongst all this despair, this confusion, this feeling of being trapped in this prison, a sight that will always stay with me. I saw this cut branch. The cut itself was blackened, so it had been cut some time ago, but had been cut by a human. I realised there was actually quite a few of these branches. This was actually the edge of the outside world. I started investigating, and there was a trail. And then the extraordinary thing of just seeing daylight, and it's still emotional to me, just this reconnection with the outside world. The one thing I've been looking forward to, praying for, imagining, was suddenly there, and it was absolutely overwhelming. And I found myself in the back of a garden. There, ahead of me, was a little hut, and there was a little man in front. And he was just standing there with a look, not of welcome, but of horror. And that was my last memory.
Having recognized the symptoms of malaria, the farmer nursed Benedict for 3 days before he was driven to a hospital in Macapá, where he made a full recovery. Benedict returned home to be reunited with his parents 1 week later.
My life was never the same again.
And Benedict has been exploring the world ever since, fulfilling his dreams of becoming a renowned adventurer, just like his father.
I've been going off to the jungle, going off to the desert, going off to the Arctic, pushing myself to the limit, trying to touch that experience that I had that was so profound. That has always haunted me, and it's something that'll always be with me, and it's steered the rest of my life.